Hello and welcome back. So in the last lecture we saw how we can use DynamoDB client's getItem method to fetch one item from the table or as a global secondary index. In this lecture we will see how we can fetch a collection of items from your primary table or global secondary index using different ways to query on them. Now there are two ways to fetch collection of items from DynamoDB table. First one is to use DynamoDB client's query method, and the other one is scan it. Now while they might seem to serve a similar purpose, the difference between them is vital. While scan is scanning through the whole table looking for elements matching criteria that we put under conditional filters, query is performing a direct lookup to a selected partition based on primary or secondary partition or hash keys. Now, as the size of your table increases, there will be a significant difference in speed of querying using both the methods. You can expect the query method to return result within 100 milliseconds. Scan can take up to a few hours to return results on a huge database. So query method is much more efficient, and you can try to use query method and not the scan method until it's absolutely necessary and there is no way to use the query method in your application. Now let's go ahead and see how we can query for a collection of items in a DynamoDB table. Now in my users table, I have created some mock items with different countries and of course different primary keys, which is email in our table, and also with different first names and last names, right? I've created these just to test our querying that we're going to do on this table. So let's go back to our project. Now for our querying, I want to use my global secondary index that we created while creating our table. So if you go to resources and users table, and if you remember, like we created a global secondary index called created at index with primary key or partition key as country and range key as created at, right? So in this global secondary index, what we want to do is to run a query which fetches collection of items with a particular country, and then we will filter them out using our range key. We can do filter based on created at timestamp greater than a certain timestamp that we pass in our body. Now let's go back to our functions. And the first thing I need to do is to create a new function or a new endpoint. I'm going to call it get users, or rather just call it get users by country and created at create type, let's say. Oops. So this is our new function, get users by country and create type. That's what we want to do. I'm just going to copy it as our function name. Let's just put get users by country, and this will be a post method because we would like to send the country and created at in the post body, and I'm going to just call it users by country, right? Now we will also need to provide our Lambda function, the new Lambda function, permission to query on the indexes in the table. So if you go down to our role, so here we have given DynamoDB star, which means like all the permissions on DynamoDB to this resource, which is our table here. Now Along with this table permission, I also want to add permission to indexes, right? Um, so global secondary index will have its own ARN URL, and this permission here just provides access to the primary table, not the index. To provide permission to the index, what I need to do here is add star. Now this will provide access to my function not only to the table but all the resources under the table, which includes the indexes, streaming, and the primary table itself. That's it. Now let's go ahead and create our module. So go to users, and here I'm just going to, let's just copy it and just change the name of the function to get users by country and create time, and also our function name in dynamodb.js, I'll just keep it same. Now here I want to send the body, which we'll get under event, and then pass the body to my get users by country and create time method. Now we need to create this new method under dynamodb.js, where we're going to query the table or the global secondary index. Now most of the parameters that we need in the query method is same, so I'm just going to copy the get user method here. Let's rename this method, export it here. Instead of email, we are getting the whole item that we send in the post request. Now under parameters, we need to remove the consistent read parameter because query method does not support it. Change the method to query here. Now we are going to query on the global secondary index, so here we need to provide the index name along with the table name, which is created at index. So if you remember here, our users table that we created, we had created a global secondary index called created at index. That's what we are passing it here. Now key parameter is not required. Instead we will have a new parameter called key condition expression, and under this attribute we need to set the condition for our partition key and range key. It could just be the partition key and range key is optional, but in our case we want to, let's say, set a condition expression for country. So we want to do this, and also I want to refine our result for a particular range, so I'm going to use range key here. We want to, let's say, get better results for all the items for a particular country which were created after a certain timestamp, right? Now of course we need to set the value of these expression attributes. Let's set them here. So we want to set the value of country and create it at. And we'll get the value from our item. Similarly for country, item dot country. Now let's say I also want to filter my results based on the first name, right? So now key condition expression takes the primary key and the secondary key, or the range key or the hash key. So they're just different names for the same thing. But along with this key condition expression, you can further refine your result based on the other attributes that you have in our global secondary index. So you can also add a filter expression which will further refine the results that we get from this expression, key condition expression. And here I want to just filter based on the first name. So I just want to select, let's filter the results further, where first name is equal to first name, and we get the value of first name from our post body. Great, we're just going to copy it into our filter expressions, and I want to project just the email, last name and first name from the global secondary index, and also get the return consume capacity. Again, this is optional, and just to benchmark your performance. Okay, this looks good, so I exported it here. I need to go back to user, let me just format it a little bit. Alright, so everything looks good. We have the user table body, sending the body here to our new method, and in here we are setting the table name, the index. Alright, there's a typo. The index name on which we want to run our query. Then we set the key condition expression, which takes the primary key and the range key. Again, range key is optional here. Oops, so many spelling mistakes. Filter expression. Now once we get the output from this expression, we can further filter our result using the filter expression, and then we are passing the values of all the attributes that we use in our conditional and filter expression. Now we are projecting just the email, last name and first name. Let's project the country as well and create it at timestamp just to validate our results. And then we are running the query method, which takes all the parameters and send back the result. And we also gave our new method permission to query on global secondary indexes in our table. Let's go back to our CLI and deploy our new code. So I'm back to my console. I'm going to deploy my project once again. So our new code is deployed here. We have a new endpoint called users by country. Just going to copy it. Let's go back to my Postman. Now here I'll create a new, I'm just going to copy this one. Let's name it users by country. This is a post method. Let's copy the new URL endpoint. Let's save it. And inside the body, I want to, let's copy or create user body. This will be a JSON. And here I just want to add the country as India and create it at timestamp. Now let's go back to my table. Now let's see, we need a timestamp. So this is the oldest timestamp I have. Let's copy this one, paste it here. Now our query should pick all the items from the global secondary index where country is India and the first name is Raj, and the item is created after this timestamp. That's great. So we have our result which matched our conditions here. Now let's say I want to change the country to Canada. Put the first name as Ankur, and this time I get two results, right, which match. So we're getting multiple items from a global secondary index based on a certain query, and you can see like this is really fast, right? So you can do one more test. I'll just put the first name as Ankit and nothing matches, so we get 0 results. If I change it to India, so we had one India with this name with country India, so we should get one output, right? So that's how you can use DynamoDB query method to fetch a collection of items from either the primary table or global secondary index. So that's all for this lecture. In the next lecture we will see how you can scan your table or global secondary index when you do not have the information of your range and primary key, or you cannot use partition key or range key, and you just want to filter it with other attributes available in your table or GSI. But that should be your last resort, because scans are really expensive, they take a lot of throughput and also very slow as your table grows. It can take up to hours to complete your scan. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lecture.